This upcoming season, we will be transitioning to the 12-team playoffs. About a decade ago, college football transitioned to the 4-team playoff era, and we had a lot of new teams, and it was pretty interesting to have a playoff in college football, but now we want to expand to 12 teams. And there are a lot of teams that can make their first college football playoff next season. And one team that comes to mind is Ole Miss. They will be in a stacked SEC conference with teams like Georgia, Alabama, and newcomers like Texas and Oklahoma. That conference is going to be stacked. But on the bright side, a lot of the teams in the SEC are going to get in the playoffs because they are in a very tough conference. We could potentially see a 9-3 team get in the playoffs. But Ole Miss has to be one of those teams that I am very certain will make the college football playoff. They haven't done it before, but last season they would have made the college football playoff if it was 12 teams. In this season, they returned Jackson Dart at quarterback. Jackson Dart is a very good quarterback. Some people consider him a top 5 college football returning quarterback, and he is going to light it up in 2024 with some of the weapons that they have at receiver. Ole Miss added Juice Wells from South Carolina. He's a 1,000-yard receiver, and he can be very dangerous if he does stay healthy. He is probably one of the better wide receivers in the SEC. They also returned Trey Harris, who had over 900 yards last season. He is a very underrated wide receiver, and he should improve even more in 2024. This receiving core is very deep. They have a solid tight end, and they have Jordan Watkins, who had 700 yards last season. The defense also has potential with new faces like Walter Nolan and Princely U. This defensive line for Ole Miss could be a force in the SEC. Walter Nolan was one of the top players in the transfer portal, and he will probably be a first-round NFL draft pick. And Princely U was a monster on the edge for Florida. So those are two huge additions for Ole Miss. Ole Miss has the second most returning starters in the SEC, and they have a head coach who you could consider is on the rise in Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin is an incredible offensive mind, and we should expect this team to do great things in 2024. Lane Kiffin brought in the #1 transfer portal class this year, and he has been building off of the transfer portal the last couple of seasons. There's not a lot of coaches that use the transfer portal as effectively as Lane Kiffin. So people should definitely watch out for this Ole Miss team in 2024 because they could be scary if they put it all together. The next team that I think could make their first college football playoff appearance in 2024 is definitely Penn State. Over the last decade, Penn State has actually finished in the top 12 every single year. So there's no other team that is going to benefit from the 12-team playoff as much as Penn State. They are a consistently good team every year. They just cannot get over the hump and win the big games against Ohio State and Michigan. But they should definitely be one of those teams that make the playoffs just about every year. And next season, they have a very easy schedule. And their only big home game is against Ohio State. This is a Penn State team that had a top 5 defense last year, and they will have a top 5 defense again in 2024. They returned a lot of the production from last season, and if there is any breakout year for this Penn State team, then it has to be 2024. They have a lot of their top stars back, and this is a pretty experienced team. They have an easy schedule, and it's basically a new era of college football, so there's no better way to kick off this new era than making the playoffs and making a name for yourself. The offense does have a lot of concerns. They lost their #1 wide receiver, Keandre Lambert-Smith, and Drew Aller didn't put up great numbers last season. To be fair, he didn't have great weapons to throw to. But if Penn State wants to have a successful season, then they will probably have to go 10-2 or 11-1, which should get them in the playoffs. But just imagine if they manage to beat Ohio State at home. This could possibly be a 12-0 team. They could possibly make the Big Ten championship. This is a year that Penn State could really capitalize on if they put it all together and have a great season. Ultimately, Penn State has been the same team every year. But I'm just saying if there is any year for Penn State to have an incredible season, then it would be the 2024 season. Because they have a very easy schedule and their only big game is against Ohio State. So we will see what they can do. The next team I have on my list is Kansas State. I am very high on this Kansas State team. Probably higher than other people are. And I probably will have them winning the Big 12. They returned 80% of the production on defense, and they already had a pretty good defense last season. But not only that, they have a pretty solid offense that doesn't get talked about a lot. They have a rising star at quarterback who is Avery Johnson. You could consider him an upgrade from Will Howard. They also went and added Dylan Edwards from the transfer portal, who was very productive for Colorado. He's definitely a very skilled player, and he should definitely get involved in that offense. The offensive line has some question marks, but this Kansas State team does have some of the skill position players that they need on the offensive side of the ball. And we know Chris Kleiman and Kansas State will continue to be a very consistent team. And now that Texas and Oklahoma are both gone, this could be the year that Kansas State puts it together and has their best season yet. The playoff is completely wide open for anybody in the Big 12 to win the Big 12 and make it to the playoffs. And Kansas State could be the team to win the Big 12 and make the college football playoff next season. They have the right foundation set, and Texas and Oklahoma are not there anymore, so Kansas State might just be the favorite. Another favorite in the Big 12 is Utah. They have similarities with Kansas State. They have a very good defense, they have a pretty solid head coach. We know what to expect with this defense. It's probably going to be a top 15 defense in college football, maybe even top 10. Kyle Whittingham is one of the most underrated coaches in college football. But the thing that really makes this team scary is having Cam Rising back. They only won 8 games last season, but that was because they got completely destroyed with injuries, and one of the big pieces that they were missing was Cam Rising. Utah won back-to-back Pac-12 championships in 2021 and 2022, and a big part of the reason for that was having Cam Rising at quarterback. Cam Rising has been gone for a while, so he could be rusty, but this is a veteran quarterback, and he has had a lot of success before. They added weapons at wide receiver with Tayshaun Lyons from Washington and Dorian Singer from USC, and they also have Micah Pittman back at receiver. He missed most of last season, and he is a huge piece to have back, because he should be productive at receiver. This is a team that came very close to making the 14 playoffs multiple times. They would always manage to lose an extra game that was kind of a random loss, but they were always a solid 9-3 or 10-2 team, and they could compete with basically anybody in college football. This is a true sleeper in 2024, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did win the Big 12. And I think we should expect a college football playoff appearance from Utah within the next 5 years, and maybe it will come as soon as next season. The next team on my list is Tennessee. The thing that makes this team dangerous is that they have a very high potential quarterback in Nico Iamaleava. Honestly, Nico Iamaleava might have the highest potential out of any young quarterback in college football right now. Nico Iamaleava was a 5-star quarterback out of high school, and he had a pretty decent showing against a very good Iowa defense last season, and they won the game 35-0. Nico Iamaleava was pretty productive on the ground, and he threw for nearly 200 yards, I believe, and look for him to improve in 2024 even more, because Josh Heupel is an incredible offensive mind. Let's not forget the numbers that 2022 offense was putting up with quarterback Hendon Hooker. He was a Heisman contender, and Nico Iamaleava could be in that same conversation. 2024 could be a very electric year offensively for Tennessee. The defense also took strides last season, and James Pierce Jr. is a stud on the defensive line. This is a pretty decent front seven, and if Tennessee puts it together on both sides of the ball, they could go on a run if everything goes right. They had a great offense and a pretty mediocre defense in 2022, but last season they had a pretty good defense, but the offense took too big of a step down, so they didn't have a great season.